When you think of France, what comes to mind?
Maybe the charming streets of Paris.
Or the vineyards of Bordeaux? Or Lyon, France's food capital?
But France is so much more than its big cities.
From Europe's tallest sand dune on the Atlantic coast to the breathtaking alpine peaks
Medieval castles.
and ancient villages perched on cliffs,
France offers an incredible diversity of landscapes and history.
we really love France, and in this video, we're going to take you off the beaten path to explore some places you may have never heard of.
These places were so unique that while we were there, we were absolutely mind blown.
Welcome to another Just Traveling Through video. Hi, I'm Celeste.
Hi, and I'm Terry.
Let's get started exploring 10 unique places in France. We visited these places on multiple trips. We didn't do them all at the same time. Some were quite a few years ago and some were more recent. This list is mostly focused on southern France.
The first item on our list is the Dune du Pilat. This is the largest sand dune in Europe, 2.9 kilometers in length, 616 meters wide, and over 100 meters in height, totaling 60 million cubic meters of sand. This area is massive.
Now, this particular location, we weren't aware of it until we were over there in France and we were looking for something to do with our then 13-year-old son.
Yeah, we were on the train from Paris to Bordeaux, and we were reading and doing some research on the way, trying to figure out what else we could do while we're in Bordeaux.
The dune itself is a natural wonder shaped by wind, sand, and sea forces over thousands of years. Its creation and evolution are the result of a complex interaction of natural processes involving sand deposition, ocean currents, and wind erosion and vegetation.
The dune is constantly moving inland due to winds and tides, engulfing parts of the nearby forest. Over centuries, entire sections of the forest have been buried underneath the sand, and the sand continues to claim more territory every year.
In fact, they believe that the sand moves between 1 and 5 meters every single year. So findings suggest that the area was used by humans as far back as 2,700 years ago. Items like pottery fragments and tools have been uncovered beneath the sand, hinting at ancient communities that lived there.
An interesting World War II fact is that the dune is so large, its height and visibility have made it a critical landmark for aviators. During World War II, pilots used the dune as a natural reference point entering France and leaving France.
And I think you told me you can see the dunes from outer space, right?
It's large enough, its footprint is so big that it's visible from outer space.
The next stop is the Canal du Midi.
One of France's most remarkable engineering feats, the canal is a 240-kilometer long canal that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea.
It was built in the 17th century under the reign of Louis XIV. It was designed by visionary engineer Pierre-Paul Riquet to facilitate trade and avoid the perilous journey around Spain, right? Wasn't the journey around Spain, like, challenging?
At that time, the French and English were constantly warring with each other, and the British Navy had absolutely locked up the Gibraltar Strait. So in order to continue to trade, the French wanted a canal that would allow them to go from the English Channel to the Mediterranean coast.
The canal is now recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It can no longer be navigated from end to end in the way that it was originally designed. The section that connected the Canal du Midi to the Atlantic Ocean via the Canal de Garonne, hopefully I pronounced that right, is no longer navigable for modern recreational boaters due to the issues like silting and lack of maintenance. So today you can only go from Toulouse to the Mediterranean, and it's a very popular thing for people to do. You can rent a boat. You don't have to have any special license or anything like that. We actually have some friends that did it. They live in Germany and they did it with their family. We always wanted to do it, but we haven't. But we thought we'd put it on here because it's such a cool thing. And you pass over the canal when you're in this area of France all the time.
Yeah, when we stayed in Rustique, which is right next to the canal, we took a walk up and down the towpath on both sides of the canal, and there must have been what, a dozen boats out that day.
Yeah, and people pull up, they get out, they walk around the little village, get something to eat. It's just looks like a really cool and relaxing time.
For you history buffs out there, this may explain the French's fascination with canals. The French built the Suez Canal, and the French tried to build the Panama Canal, based primarily with their success with the Canal du Midi.
Next on our list is Lourdes, France. Lourdes is a small town in southwestern France located at the base of the Pyrenees. It's world famous for its religious significance because in 1858 a young girl named Bernadette reported visions of the Virgin Mary.
Since that time, Lourdes has become one of the most important pilgrimage sites in the world, attracting millions of visitors each year.
But here's the thing, we didn't even plan on visiting Lourdes when we were there, and we just added it to our list because we were on the way to Toulouse and we needed somewhere to spend a day or two, and so this is where we went, and we had no idea what to expect.
And while we're not particularly religious, we found Lourdes to be absolutely fascinating. There was this high energy that everybody was emitting because everyone was hopeful for some kind of miraculous cure.
Yeah, and the town itself was really pretty. It really surprised us.
The main sites include the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, the grotto of Massiabel, and the underground basilica of St. Pius X.
But it wasn't just about the faith either. It also has a really deep history. There's a medieval fortress in the town. It gives you an incredible view of the town and the surrounding mountains.
Yeah, whether you visit for faith, history, or just curiosity, Lourdes is an unforgettable experience.
And if you want to see more, check out our full video on visiting Lourdes. We tell you all about how to visit and what there is to see and do. Next on the list is Carcassonne.
This is one of the largest fortified cities in France and perhaps even Europe. It's truly massive. The walls alone are 3 miles around, and it's impressive. It's just high up on a hill. You can see it wherever you park in Carcassonne to go visit, and it's just awe-inspiring.
This is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It dates back more than 2,500 years, and it was a strategic stronghold for Romans, Visigoths, Saracens, and Franks. They had done a remarkable job on the restoration they did back in the
19th century. Yeah, the walls were starting to crumble. They did a wonderful job because today it's just a beautiful piece of work.
This was another thing that was great to do with our son at that age of 13. He was just fascinated by everything that he was seeing. We just don't have things like this in the United States.
No, there's a little bit of history, a Cathar history here that we were researching, and it was a great day trip.
Speaking of the Cathars, this was
a religious sect that was very popular in the Languedoc region of France, which is where Carcassonne sits, and they had divergent views from the Catholic Church, which led to a lot of strife.
The Catholic Church actually declared the Cathars heretics and started the Albigensian Crusades between 1209 and 1229 to eradicate them.
Many Cathar refuges were in castles like Montségur, Quéribus, and Peyrepertuse, which later became associated with the overall Cathar resistance.
So our son was very interested in all of this at that age, and part of our trip was to give him more of a view into history to kind of bring the history to life for him. So in addition to visiting Carcassonne, we visited 2 Cathar strongholds,
which were close to Carcassonne.
Both Quéribus and Peyrepertuse. Now, they're both situated in the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains. They both offer breathtaking views from the top.
Yeah, they're very high.
Quéribus itself was one of the last refuges for the Cathars. It
was originally built in the 10th century, and it played a crucial role during the 13th century Cathar conflict. After the fall of Montségur in 1244, Quéribus became one of the final refuges for the Cathars.
Yeah, there's some legends around Quéribus that says that it's possibly connected to the Templars, and that there might be treasure or secrets somewhere hidden within its walls.
The chateau is very accessible to visitors. There's a big parking lot, and then you just have to walk up the last few hundred meters to the top. But the views are well worth the walk because the views are just for miles and miles.
Peyrepertuse is often called the Celestial Carcassonne. Well, that's kind of funny because my name is Celeste, and so...
Coincidentally.
Because of its immense size and seamless integration into the cliffside.
An interesting side story, during the Albigensian Crusade, Peyrepertuse played a pivotal role in defending the region. One legend suggests that the castle was so impenetrable The attackers resorted to bribing its defenders rather than laying siege.
Yeah, there's also a story of a secret tunnel that might have connected Peyrepertuse to nearby castles like Quéribus and transport people or treasures in times of danger. And that would be crazy. They're kind of far apart.
Yeah, they're actually connected by a valley, but it's several miles. So I would be amazed to know there was a tunnel that connected the two.
Next up is the Pont du Gard.
This is an interesting structure. It's nearly 2,000 years old, and it was an aqueduct system designed to carry water from a spring north of Pont du Gard to the Roman colony of Nemausus, which is modern-day Nimes.
No, it was actually part of a larger system. It was part of a system that was about 31 miles long.
And the aqueduct was needed here to cross the river.
It could transport up to 20,000 cubic meters or 5.3 million gallons of water a day. And that's back in 40 to 60 AD. That's incredible.
Just amazing. This is a really big structure. It's nearly 50 meters, 160 feet tall, making it the tallest Roman aqueduct bridge still standing in the world today.
Roman architecture just so impressive.
Yeah, this aqueduct was built by using locally quarried limestone. And if you look closely, they didn't use mortar anywhere. Each of the stones was hand cut and sized to fit tightly and properly.
Now you can see the 3 levels here in the video, and they built it layer by layer, starting with the largest and the strongest stones at the bottom to support the weight of the upper tiers. And then the uppermost tier, which carried the water channel, was lined with watertight layers of stone.
An amazing side note is that the overall construction of the Pont de Garde likely took about 15 years, and the laborers were using chisel, hammers, saws, and drills for stone shaping and cranes and pulleys for lifting heavy materials. That's amazing, all done by hand.
So next up, we're going to tell you about this little town that we stayed in before we get into the next 2 places, because this is where we were staying while we visited those 2
Yeah, this
places.
is sort of our base camp in that part of France.
So this was Lake
Annecy.
Annecy. We used to pronounce it Annecy, which is totally wrong, and we're embarrassed, but it's Annecy or Annecy.
Gringos that we are.
And it's a beautiful town. It was really made an impression on us. It was a cool place to hang out for a few days. And if you're in that area visiting some of these things, staying in Annecy is a good idea.
I don't know if you can tell from these images, but the water quality and the color, the clarity of the water are just amazing. It's one of the cleanest lakes in Europe.
And you can boat from one side to the other. You can rent. People are out there sculling and swimming and water skiing. And there's a ferry that will take you around to different spots along the lake. This is one of our favorite cities in France. Next up is the Gorge du Fier. This is about 12 kilometers northwest of Annecy, known for its dramatic cliffs, narrow passages, and crystal clear waters.
The gorge is a really unique opportunity to walk through a breathtakingly narrow canyon carved over millions of years by the Fier River.
The canyon has steep limestone walls that rise up to 70 meters or 230 feet above the water.
At its narrowest point, the gorge is only about 4 meters or 13 feet wide.
The footbridge is considered one of the most impressive pedestrian bridges in France due to its suspension and views. They had this sign here that showed you how high the water had gotten at different stages, so now and then they'll have floods in here.
Yeah, they'll get high water periodically and it'll be unusable, but the marker shows you how deep it got.
The next on our list is the Aiguille du Midi cable car, one of the world's most iconic alpine experiences.
The cable car from Chamonix to Aiguille du Midi takes you from 1,035 meters to a staggering 3,842 meters, offering jaw-dropping views of the Mont Blanc Massif.
It opened in 1955 and was once one of the highest cable cars in the world and still boasts one of the steepest vertical ascents. We did this ascent with our son. When we were in the cable car, it was a bit of a cloudy day. Like you go through the clouds as you went up, and it felt like you were going straight vertical.
I've never seen a cable car when you looked up, the cables were going straight up into the air, and in our case, they're going up into the clouds.
And you couldn't see anything for a while. You were just like rising really steep. I think our son was really nervous at that point.
Yeah, I don't think he was quite prepared for the altitude.
And there was a place to go and view the scenery. There was tunnels that took you over, and then on the top there,
There's an observatory because the ambient light from the valley doesn't get in the way of their observations of the outer space. On the way back down from the top, we actually got off at the mid-mountain stop, and the mid-mountain stop exists so that the cars themselves can be exchanged. In other words, you get off of the one you came down on and you take a different one down to Chamonix. So we got off and did some hiking about because the views from up there are just mind-blowing.
and it wasn't quite as cold as it was on top.
Now the valley, it was very clear that day. We could see north and south in the valley. It was just beautiful.
Doesn't matter if you're young or old, this was a very cool thing to visit.
Very unique. If you are looking to get away from cityscapes like Paris and other cities in France, this would be what you should go to see.
Our next stop is a visit to Rocamadour. Rocamadour is located in southwestern France in the Lot department of the Occitanie region.
It sits dramatically on a cliffside high above the Alzou River Canyon, making it one of France's most breathtaking medieval villages.
It is a major pilgrimage site on the Way of St. James, which is kind of interesting.
Because Camino de Santiago is a long, long walk away from this area.
And that's also part of the Way of St. James.
Yeah.
When was it constructed?
Rocamadour was initially constructed in 1152 on a 150-meter cliff. Construction continued up through the 19th century.
There's an interesting story about Rocamadour involving Saint Amador, who was a hermit that lived there.
Yeah, he is believed to have dug caves or carved out chapels into the cliffs of Rocamadour. The legend goes that he was a hermit seeking solitude for prayer and worship, and he probably hollowed out a small sanctuary in the rock, which later became a site of pilgrimage. One of the most famous chapels in Rocamadour, the Chapel of Our Lady, is thought to have been Amador's place of worship, and it now houses the Black Madonna, a revered statue associated with miracles. While the historical accuracy of Amador's direct involvement in the excavation is uncertain, the legend ties him to the foundation of Rocamadour as a sacred site.
And didn't they find a body at some point and they thought it was his?
They did. The legend has it that a body was found hundreds of years after the time of Amador, and somehow it became widely known that it was probably Saint Amador himself. Nobody knows for sure.
We have a video that we did when we visited the Dordogne that will give you a lot more information about visiting and logistics and such. So if you're interested, it should be showing up now or it'll be at the end of the video. Feel free to check that out to get more information about how to visit. The next stop is Chateau de Baynac, which is also in the Dordogne region.
We were inspired to visit this location because the movie entitled The Last Duel was filmed there with Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Adam Driver, directed by Ridley Scott. The views of that castle were so staggering to us, and when we looked at a map and realized how close we're going to be, we thought, yes, we have to go here.
One of the coolest stories about the Chateau de Baynac involves its strategic role during the Hundred Years' War, during 1337 to 1453. The castle, built in the 12th century, was a stronghold of the French forces, while the neighboring Chateau de Castelnau, just across the Dordogne River, was held by the English. The close proximity created a legendary rivalry.
Richard de Lionheart, the King of England, laid siege to Chateau de Baynac in 1189. Despite his formidable reputation, the castle's defenses proved nearly impenetrable. It was one of the few times Richard the Lionheart faced such fierce resistance. Though he eventually captured the fortress briefly, The castle's thick walls and strategic design ensured its legacy as one of the strongest defensive structures in the region.
Yeah, we really like history when we're traveling. Terry loves history, and so these kinds of things are really fascinating. And you don't see them everywhere. Everybody's always talking about the major locations, and those tend to get busy, especially in the summertime. So these kinds of places to visit are enriching, right? Historically, you learn so much, and they're beautiful.
Yeah, we just don't have anything in the United States that compares to this. And it's fascinating because European history is so long and so diverse, and everything is still there. Every country hangs on to these monuments, if you were, and treats them in a revered way.
Last but not least is the Loire Valley, home to more than 300 chateaus, each with its own story to tell.
The valley stretches 175 miles from Orléans to Nantes, and this region is packed with history, stunning landscapes, and of course castles. Some like Chambord or Chenonceau and Valandry attract huge crowds, but if you know where to look, you'll find less crowded chateaus that feel.
And those chateaus make you feel like you're going back in time. Even as half of the magic is driving through the Loire Valley, it feels like something out of a storybook, doesn't it?
It does. All of these are country roads. They're not very crowded, and chateaus literally are around every corner.
There's vineyards, sunflower fields, charming villages. Some of our best times in the Loire Valley were just stopping to eat somewhere along the side of the road.
There is just nowhere else in the world quite like the Loire Valley.
Now, one of the first chateaus that we went to was Chateau de Brissac, and we were not prepared for how big it was. It was the tallest chateau in France, standing at 7 stories.
But what really caught our attention was the ghostly legend associated.
Yeah, they say Charlotte de Brissac, the wife of the chateau's owner at the time, was murdered after her husband discovered her infidelity. Now she's known as La Dame Verte, the Green Lady, and is said to haunt the chateau's upper floors.
Visitors report eerie sightings, strange noises, and an unsettling presence. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it adds a whole new layer to exploring these incredible castles.
Yeah, there's all of the castles have their own stories, and so that was just one, and it was the first one we went to, so it's kind of interesting to go to all of them.
Right, each location has its own set of legends, and some of these chateaus are still occupied by the original owning family.
There are a lot more castles to discover. If you want to see highlights, check out our Loire Valley overview video. And if you're fascinated by castles as we are,
We also have a video where we visit 12 amazing chateaux in this region.
and that's all we have for you today on 10 unique places to visit in France. We think they were unique and they're pretty cool. We hope you learned something along the way.
We hope you enjoy what we've put together because we certainly had fun visiting these places.
And check out some of the other videos we've done if you're interested in more detail and more specifics about actually how to tour them.
We think you'll enjoy them.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.